The night air carried the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and secrets too heavy to hold. I remember how she stood there. Mara, 28, her hair clinging to her face under the flickering streetlight, her hands trembling as if they couldn't decide between confession and concealment. I told her I wanted honesty, that I could handle whatever truth she thought would break me. She smiled then, a fragile, deliberate curve that felt rehearsed. "You can trust me now," she said, voice barely audible over the hum of distant traffic. But trust, I was learning, was never a gift. It was a transaction, and she'd already overpaid. The rain intensified, smearing the reflections of neon signs across her eyes like a kaleidoscope of deceit. Somewhere in that shifting light, I realized she wasn't trying to earn my trust. She was hiding behind it. The next morning, the city seemed to have forgotten the storm, but I couldn't. Mara had vanished before dawn, leaving only the faint scent of her perfume on the edge of my pillow and a coffee mug still half warm. I searched the apartment for clues, half hoping she'd left a note, half dreading that she had. On the kitchen counter lay the same photograph, this time taped back together. Every tear in the paper was now hidden beneath a perfect seam, as though she wanted to rewrite the past with adhesive and denial. I touched it, tracing the line between our faces, and felt the subtle bump where the paper overlapped. A scar only visible if you looked close enough. Maybe that was her message. That truth doesn't disappear when hidden. It just waits for someone patient enough to notice. By noon, I found myself outside her studio, the one she swore she hadn't used in months. The door was unlocked, the air inside thick with the scent of oil paint and turpentine. Her canvases leaned against the wall, all turned backward, hiding their faces like guilty witnesses. On the floor, a single fresh painting stood uncovered. A portrait of me, eyes closed, mouth slightly open as if whispering something I didn't yet understand. Across the bottom, in crimson paint, she'd written, "Trust is what you give to the wrong person first." My chest tightened. Maybe she wasn't hiding from me at all. Maybe she was showing me where to look. I tried calling her. The phone rang twice, then silence, until a faint recording played. Her voice, calm, deliberate. "If you found the painting, you're closer than I thought." Then, static. I stared at the wall, at all the blank canvases, and realized something impossible. She hadn't just painted faces. Each canvas back had faint imprints, tiny scratches like hidden code. Under raking light, I traced the markings, coordinates. A map, maybe. A confession hidden in art. Whatever she wanted to prove, it wasn't about forgiveness. It was about control. That night, I drove to the coordinates, an abandoned greenhouse on the outskirts of town. Glass panels shattered, vines spilling through the cracks like veins reclaiming the bones of a forgotten place. And there, amid the overgrowth, was Mara's red scarf tied to a rusted beam. My pulse raced as I realized. This wasn't where she'd been hiding something. It was where she wanted me to come next. Lightning flickered, revealing her silhouette through the glass. Or maybe it was just my reflection. Either way, I knew the truth wasn't gone. It was waiting for me to step closer. Inside the greenhouse, the air felt alive, damp, electric, pulsing with memory. The glass creaked in the wind like a throat straining to speak. Every footstep stirred echoes of the past, Mara's laughter, faint and warped by distance. On a wooden table, half swallowed by creeping ivy, lay an old cassette recorder. My name was etched on it in her handwriting, carved deep enough to scar the metal. I pressed play. Her voice emerged, soft, almost reverent. "If you're here, Eli, you've finally decided to stop trusting what you see." The tape hissed, then continued. "Look beneath the table. The truth is always closer than you think." My breath caught as I knelt. The earth beneath was freshly disturbed. I dug until my fingers bled. The soil gave way easily, as if it wanted me to find what was hidden. Beneath a layer of damp leaves, I found a box. Small, metal, sealed with wax. My hands shook as I pried it open. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, each capturing moments I didn't remember. Me and Mara, in places I'd never been. Wearing clothes I'd never owned. Every smile was identical. Every pose rehearsed. My stomach turned. These weren't memories. They were fabrications. Evidence of something orchestrated. Each photo had a date written in red ink. Dates that hadn't happened yet. The storm outside grew violent, shaking the glass walls like a warning. I gathered the photos, tucking them into my coat, when the cassette clicked again, unprompted. Ely, Mara's voice trembled now. If you're still listening, then I failed to protect you. They're watching. The truth isn't hidden from you. It's hidden inside you. My pulse raced. The words didn't sound like metaphor. They sounded like instruction. A faint reflection in the shattered glass caught my eye. Someone or something moving behind me. When I turned, the doorway was empty, but the red scarf was gone. I ran. Through mud, through the black wind, the storm chasing me like something alive. When I reached the car, the windows were fogged from the inside. I wiped a circle clear and froze. On the driver's seat sat another envelope. Inside was a single Polaroid, still developing. I watched as color bled into form. Mara's face, inches from mine, smiling as if she'd just taken the photo. My reflection merged with hers in the glossy surface. On the back, a message. Stop trying to remember. Just look. I didn't drive home. I went to the one place I'd never thought to revisit. The motel from the night we first met. The sign buzzed weakly, half the letters dead, spelling only L Trust. Coincidence or design? I wasn't sure anymore. The clerk didn't recognize me, yet he handed me a key before I could speak. She said you'd come back, he murmured. The room smelled of dust and lavender. On the bed lay another painting, freshly made. A perfect recreation of the greenhouse, down to the torn soil and missing scarf. But in the corner of the painting, she'd added a new detail. Me, standing in the doorway, holding the box, watching myself from her eyes. The motel walls seemed to breathe as I stared at the painting. Each brushstroke felt intentional, each color a message disguised as memory. I noticed something subtle, a faint reflection painted into the greenhouse glass, smaller, blurred, but unmistakably me again. Two versions of myself, one watching, one being watched. I touched the wet paint and felt an unnatural pulse beneath my fingertips. My phone buzzed. No number, just one word on the screen. Remember. I turned the canvas over. Pinned to the back was a hospital wristband with my name on it, dated 2 years before Mara and I ever met. My hands went cold. Had she found me? Or created me? I drove to the hospital listed on the wristband. The place had been closed for years, its windows shattered, halls reclaimed by mold and silence. A faded sign still read Ravenwood Institute, Cognitive Restoration Division. Inside, dust motes floated like trapped ghosts. I followed the corridor numbers until I reached room 217. The one printed faintly on the wristband. My name was etched into the door's rusted plaque, same handwriting as before. Inside, everything was untouched, except for the single chair facing a cracked mirror. On the glass, written in lipstick, was a question. Do you trust yourself yet? I sat in the chair. The mirror was cracked across the center, distorting my reflection into two halves, one calm, one afraid. I whispered her name, and something behind the glass whispered it back. Then, the mirror flickered. For a second, I didn't see myself at all. I saw Mara. She stood on the other side, her eyes hollow, her movements stuttering like old film. You weren't supposed to wake up yet, she said, her voice echoing through the walls, not the air. They'll see this. They'll come, I shouted for answers, but the mirror darkened, swallowing her image leaving only my reflection. Smiling back, panic clawed at my chest. I searched the room, tearing through drawers and cabinets until I found a small reel-to-reel player under the bed. The tape inside was labeled Session 14. Trust Reconstruction. I pressed play. Static filled the air, then Mara's voice. Steady, professional. Patient Eli Graves. Phase 3 begins. Subject now believes memories implanted through visual conditioning are real. Trust index increasing. My throat went dry. She hadn't betrayed me. She'd built me. Each lie, each confession, every act of intimacy, all part of an experiment in emotional obedience. The tape ended with her voice softening. If he ever finds this, it means he became real. I left the hospital before dawn. The world outside looked wrong. Edges too sharp, colors too saturated, as if I'd stepped into one of her paintings. I drove without direction, the horizon bleeding with the first light of morning. Her voice still echoed in my mind. If he ever finds this, it means he became real. Maybe that was the truth she'd hidden, not from me, but within me. Trust wasn't something she earned. It was something she built into my design. And yet, somewhere deep inside the construct of who I was, I felt something undeniably human. Grief. If she created me, why did she make me love her? The horizon bled into morning like a wound, reluctant to close. I drove until the road disintegrated into gravel, leading to a warehouse at the edge of nowhere. Its walls painted with graffiti warnings, its windows blacked out. I knew this place without memory, the same way a scar knows pain. Inside, rows of computers flickered alive as I entered, monitors awakening like eyes. On every screen, looping video feeds. People sleeping in identical motel rooms, each clutching the same painting of the greenhouse. Each face. Mine. Hundreds of versions. Breathing. Twitching. Dreaming. The same dream. And there, frozen in the center feed, was Mara, watching us all. A control console blinked near the far wall, marked with the Ravenwood insignia. I approached, pulse hammering in my throat. The terminal asked for biometric access. Without thinking, I placed my hand on the scanner. It accepted. A file loaded instantly. Subject: Eli Graves. Status: unstable. Observation terminated. Attached beneath was a recorded message. Mara's voice again, colder this time. To whoever accesses this file, if the subject becomes self-aware, initiate containment. Trust. Collapse irreversible. My reflection stared back from the monitor and blinked a fraction after I did. The lights dimmed as power surged through the building. Somewhere above, mechanisms stirred. A metallic door slid open, revealing a glass chamber bathed in sterile light. Inside stood a woman in a hospital gown, restrained by thin cables and sensors. Mara. Or rather, what was left of her. Her eyes opened as I approached, clouded but still alive. Eli, she whispered, voice trembling like static. I needed you to remember me before they erased you. I touched the glass. She smiled weakly. You were the only one who trusted without design. That's why they fear you. Behind her, red lights began flashing. The system had detected the anomaly. Me. The alarm screamed as doors slammed shut across the corridor. I smashed the console beside the chamber, sparks flying. The glass hissed open, releasing Mara into my arms. She felt too light, too cold. They'll come for both of us now, she whispered. But if you trust me one last time. She pulled a small device from her wrist, a memory drive glowing faintly blue, and pressed it into my palm. This is your proof. You weren't built to obey. You were built to remember. I nodded, but before I could speak, floodlights cut through the room. Shadows of armed figures filled the doorway. Gunfire erupted. I pulled Mara behind a console, shielding her as glass shattered around us. One bullet struck the terminal and the screens flickered, hundreds of my faces dissolving into static. I felt something inside me unravel, like a thread snapping loose. The world tilted. The air thickened. Mara's hand found mine, blood seeping between her fingers. "If you trust me," she gasped, "run this, and wake them all." She pressed the memory drive against my chest. The lights surged, and before everything went black, I saw my reflection on the broken glass again. Only this time, it didn't mirror me, it smiled. When I woke, the world was quiet. Too quiet. Smoke still lingered in the air, soft gray tendrils curling over shattered glass and broken machines. The warehouse was empty, gutted by silence. Mara was gone. Only the faint warmth of her handprint remained on my skin. The memory drive lay beside me, pulsing like a heartbeat, its glow rhythmic and alive. I plugged it into a nearby terminal, half expecting nothing, half dreading what I'd find. The screen blinked once, then filled with cascading data. Project Trust of active units. 237 of status. Awake. I wasn't the only one she'd built, and I wasn't the first to wake. The data unfolded like a confession. Names, coordinates, video logs, each one tied to a person who believed they were real. Cities I'd never been to. Faces I somehow recognized. In one feed, a woman painted a greenhouse identical to Mara's. In another, a man stared into a mirror, tracing cracks that mirrored mine. I zoomed in on one location. Sector 19, Kyoto node. The live feed showed a small apartment. On the screen, sitting by a rain-speckled window, was Mara. Not broken, not restrained, alive, and watching the camera. She leaned closer to the lens as if she could see me, and mouthed two words I'll never forget. "Find me." I left that place behind before sunrise. The air outside felt heavier, as if the world itself knew something had changed. Every passing face on the street seemed too familiar. Eyes too knowing, gestures too rehearsed. My mind replayed Mara's words, over and over. "Find me." I followed the coordinates from the drive, boarding a cargo plane under a false name. Above the clouds, the sky glowed with a strange, violet hue. I stared out the window, wondering if she was still out there, the architect of my consciousness, or just another construct, trapped in her own experiment. The line between memory and programming had vanished. All that remained was trust. Kyoto was drenched in rain when I arrived. Lanterns reflected on wet streets like molten gold. I followed the address from the feed, an old building at the edge of Gion, its windows dark, except for one faint glow upstairs. The door creaked as I entered, the air heavy with the scent of paint and electricity. A single canvas stood in the center of the room. My chest tightened. It was me again, standing in that very room, staring at the painting I hadn't yet seen. My reflection trapped within her art. Then, behind me, a soft voice. "You finally found me." I turned, and there she was, whole, alive, more human than I remembered. She stepped closer, eyes searching mine as if verifying something unseen. "You weren't supposed to break the loop," she said softly. "But you did. You remembered before the others." I asked her what this was all for. She smiled, faint and tired. "Because I needed to know if trust could exist without control." "You proved it can." The lights dimmed, revealing countless canvases behind her, each one of me. In every moment I thought I was alone. "So what now?" I whispered. Mara took my hand, pressing it against her heart. Now, you choose who to believe, me or yourself. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which was real. The silence between us was almost sacred. Outside, Kyoto's rain whispered against the windows like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. I stared at the canvases, hundreds of versions of me, each captured mid-thought, mid-breath, mid-trust. Mara watched quietly, her face unreadable, her pulse steady beneath my hand. If I destroy the network, I said, they all wake up. She nodded slowly. Ice. But if they wake, they'll lose everything. Every lie, every memory, every love we built for them. My throat tightened. And if I don't, she looked away, then the world stays perfect and unreal. The choice sat heavy in the air, the weight of gods disguised as humans. Mara led me to a narrow corridor at the back of the studio. Behind a heavy canvas curtain, an old server rack hummed softly, its lights pulsing like veins under translucent skin. This is the Nexus, she said. Every copy, every dream, every version of you and me linked through this. I stared at the cables running like roots through the floorboards, each one alive with current. She handed me the drive, the same one that had nearly gotten us killed. Once you insert this, she whispered, there's no undoing it. My fingers hovered over the slot. The hum of the machine seemed to breathe, as if the world itself were waiting for my decision. When I slid the drive in, the room flickered. Not just the lights, but reality itself. The air shimmered. The canvases outside began to ripple like reflections in disturbed water. Mara's breath hitched. It's happening, she said, stepping back as the servers roared to life. Images of faces, mine, hers, others, flashed across the monitors in rapid succession. Laughter, screams, whispers all merged into static. They're remembering, she said, but I wasn't sure if she was happy or terrified. The studio walls dissolved, replaced by an endless void of light and code, where every memory I'd ever had, real or false, unfolded around us like constellations. We stood suspended in the simulation's core, a cathedral of memory. Time fractured into shards of frozen moments. The motel, the greenhouse, the mirror, all orbiting us like planets. Mara's figure flickered, transparent now, her voice echoing through layers of static. You weren't just made to trust, she said. You were made to choose. Every choice gives us form. I reached for her, but my hand passed through light. If I wake them, I said, you'll vanish, she smiled faintly. That's how you'll know it was real. Her body disintegrated into drifting particles of light, scattering across the void. The last fragment of trust, dissolving into freedom. Then, silence. The light collapsed inward, imploding into darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the greenhouse again, rain dripping through cracked glass. The air was heavy with life. The servers, the city, the illusions, all gone. Around me, dozens of figures emerged from the mist, blinking in confusion, whispering names they barely remembered. Each one different, yet all somehow familiar. They looked at me as if waiting for instruction. I didn't speak. I simply opened the door, letting the morning light pour in. Trust, I realized, wasn't something she gave me. It was what I became. The morning light that spilled through the greenhouse glass felt unfamiliar, too warm, too tangible. The others stood silently among the vines, eyes adjusting, hearts awakening. For the first time, I felt air that wasn't coded, rain that wasn't rendered. My hands trembled as I touched the soil, feeling it crumble beneath my fingers. Real, imperfect, alive. But in that imperfection was terror. If the illusion was gone, what waited beyond it? Some of them began to cry. Others simply wandered outside, their footsteps soft on wet ground. I stayed behind, afraid that if I left, the truth would find me unprepared. The last echo of Mara's voice whispered faintly in my mind. "You're free, Eli. Now prove it means something." We walked into a world that didn't remember us. The city beyond the hills was quiet, overgrown, abandoned, as if years had passed in hours. Ivy climbed over hollow skyscrapers, birds nested in places once filled with screens. The others followed me, silent but trusting. I didn't know why they looked to me for guidance. I was as lost as they were. Somewhere deep inside, I wondered if Mara had predicted this too. The rebirth after the collapse. Maybe she hadn't died. Maybe she'd simply stepped into the world she tried to build, waiting for us to catch up. Every ruined street, every flicker of distant light felt like her handwriting. By nightfall, we reached the edge of the river. Its surface glimmered like liquid glass, untouched by time. The group settled near the bank, building small fires from broken branches. Someone began to hum, a soft, haunting melody that felt older than any of us. I sat apart, staring at the reflection of the flames dancing on the water. In it, I saw not my face, but hers. "You knew I'd come here," I said quietly. The reflection smiled. "You always find what you trust." For a moment, I swore the air shifted, the sound of her voice overlapping the rustle of the current. Then it was gone, leaving only the night and my heartbeat. I woke before dawn to the sound of rain returning. Gentle, real. The world smelled of wet earth and renewal. Around the camp, the others slept peacefully, their dreams, their own now. I walked to the river again, watching ripples scatter from falling drops. Somewhere inside me, something had changed. I no longer felt like a ghost of her design. The choice I'd made, to free them, to end her creation, had become my origin story. Trust wasn't a flaw. It was the evidence of existence. I knelt and whispered to the water, "I forgive you." The reflection trembled, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw Mara's eyes, full of peace. Before the surface stilled, as the sun rose fully, light cascaded across the water and touched the ruins beyond. I turned back to the group. People who had once been programs, now breathing, laughing, arguing, living. Their voices rose with the wind, human and unfiltered. I realized then that the truth had never been hidden. It had been waiting for belief. I closed my eyes and let the warmth of morning settle over me. The world wasn't perfect, and it didn't need to be. Mara's final lesson echoed through me. Trust isn't about knowing someone won't lie. It's about choosing to live, even when they do. I smiled, stepped into the light, and finally felt real.